Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Thank you very much for coming. My name is Stu Abramson. I'm the president of the Doylestown Historical Society. And before we begin, just a couple of quick announcements. Number one, I'll give you a weather forecast. And that is, we just checked the weather forecast, and the only time it is scheduled to rain in the next 4 to 5 days is the next 2 hours. I don't know how they planned it that way, but they did. But we're going to proceed anyway. So, and what we're going to do, by the way, is, has everybody got a program that you've looked at here? When we get to the end of the program, we're in Plan B now, you recognize that, right? But when we get to the end of the program where it says unveil the shroud to the marker, we're going to have somebody check the weather out there. And if it seems like it's okay, we're going to all march down to the armory and get ready for a big finish down there. So we'll make that a decision, when we're ready. I will tell you, I already told you that we're here for the 100th anniversary of the United States entering into World War I. And very thankful for the firehouse for loaning us their facilities here, and in particular, Bill Price, who has been greatly helpful to us, and President Jay Fedorov, and ex-president or former president Bill Cope. All of those people, as well as the other members of the firehouse, have been very helpful to us, and thank you very much. We are also very grateful to the county planners for incorporating the facade of the Armory into the new Justice Center. And we're very appreciative of their sense of history. So that worked out very well for the community, and we thought that we would honor that respect for history by applying this, this plaque, this historical marker, I should say. We at the Historical Society attach a lot of importance to connections to the past. And in this case here, the connection to the past is the National Guard. Most of you know that the Armory was the training grounds for what was Company G of the National Guard during that time. We're talking about 1909 time frame. Well, the National Guard members that we have here that will be part of our honor guard are from the 28th Division out of Harrisburg. And so these people that you're about to meet here traveled for 2 hours from Harrisburg to come here. And we are most appreciative of that. So, with that, National Guard, parade the colors. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing for the singing of the National Anthem by Susan Whiteneck. And also following that, we will have the invocation.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that
Ladies and gentlemen, the Reverend David Green of Salem Church.
Please pray with me. Eternal God, today as we dedicate an historical marker in commemoration of our Bucks County National Guard, called to service 100 years ago, let us not forget. Let us never forget the personal sacrifices of our citizen soldiers dedicated to the cause of creating a lasting peace, who put their lives on hold, leaving their homes and families with no guarantee of a safe return from the dangers of war. Let what we do today truly honor their memory, so that we and future generations will know the cost of being people who strive for justice, peace, and understanding among all people and all nations. Amen.
Thank you. You please be seated. Our next speaker is Lieutenant Colonel John Sheppard, retired infantry officer, military historian, and currently lecturer at the continuing education program at Delaware Valley University. Colonel Sheppard.
Thank you, Stu. We're here today to recognize and commemorate events that took place in and around a building that is no more. The Doylestown Armory was dedicated in 1910, and after demolition of much of the structure, its facade was incorporated into the new County Justice Center in 2012. For nearly 100 years, it was a training and assembly place for citizen soldiers, as well as a gathering place for members of the community at large. For most of the time the building stood here, National Guardsmen met once each week in the facility. In that armory, they learned the basic skills of an individual soldier, how to stand and move as a soldier, how to handle their primary weapons, and how to perform as members of a team. As they matured, they learned and practiced the tasks of non-commissioned officers and assumed responsibility not only for leading and controlling their men, but of recruiting new guardsmen and encouraging their subordinates to continue in service. Here too, non-commissioned men aspired to and attained officer rank. In the early years of the 20th century, the Guard was unique in that nearly all of its officers came up through the ranks. Lieutenants had to serve first as privates, corporals, sergeants, sometimes advancing to first sergeant before being selected for a commission. They knew from experience the roles of their non-commissioned officers and men, and were in that way much more mature than some young officers that I've known in my time in the service. They were to prove themselves worthy in the years that followed. The men and women in the latter years of the Armory's life who took on the role of guardsmen did so voluntarily. They joined in peacetime for the experience, comradeship, exposure to others of like mind, and the hope of advancement and contacts with local leaders. They created together an organized adjunct to America's small regular army in the event of war, and a disciplined force which the governor could call upon in peacetime to help in the event of disaster or civil unrest. In this, the 100th year since America's entry into World War I, we specifically honor the 150-odd Doylestown National Guardsmen of 1917. I must recognize at this point the photograph collage over here that was brought in by the folks from American Legion Post 210, which shows the soldiers of D Company as they were about to depart on the great experience that was the First World War. These guardsmen were the heirs to a tradition established by the militias of our revolution and carried forward by the first volunteers in our Civil War. They had voluntarily joined together to organize and train for war. In an underarmed nation, they established and maintained a force capable of reinforcing the regular establishment. These guardsmen made up G Company of the 6th Infantry Regiment, National Guard of Pennsylvania. They responded to the President's call in 1917, marching from the Armory up Shule and down to the Doylestown train station in September of that year. They first encamped at Camp Hancock, Georgia, outside Augusta, and there went through a massive reorganization. The 6th Infantry was combined with Pittsburgh's 16th Infantry Regiment to form the newly designated 111th Infantry. It was this unit that fought through the First World War, from the Second Battle of the Marne through the end of the conflict. Doylestown's guardsmen, along with the rest of the 28th Division, represented today by the men and women who were in our color guard a few moments ago, were in the thick of fighting. Together, they earned the title the Iron Division in honor of their tenacity in both attack and defense. The men of Company G knew war at its most brutal. 16 of the men who marched away on September 12th gave their last full measure of devotion. 7 remain in the soil of France near where they fell. 9 were returned to the United States after the war, and their bodies lie in repose in various cemeteries, both up at the top of the hill here and in other communities around Pennsylvania. 49 of the remainder, fully a third, were wounded in one way, in one level of severity or another. They bore those scars for the rest of their days. Both the wounded and those not physically scarred by their 130 days of combat returned home and did their best to pick up the strands of their pre-war lives. A number of them returned to the Armory building and formed the basis of a reestablished G Company, 111th Infantry, which would occupy the Armory in various designations from that point until the beginning of the Second World War. But that's another story for a later time. Today, as we take note of the importance of the structure, let us also pay due respect to all the National Guard personnel who served here and to those who continue serving today. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And now, the Mayor of Doylestown Borough, the Honorable Ron Strauss.
I had the honor of attending a service at Salem 2 weeks ago. Thank you, Reverend Green. To honor the people and the descendants of about 35 servicemen of that 150 some who came from Salem Church. 35 including the minister himself and including at least one woman. That's all the more miraculous because a generation before, Salem was having services in German as well as in English. The stories that were told by descendants form the historic fabric of our community. And I'm well aware not to tread on the history of our involvement in World War I. I think I'll leave that to the Doylestown Historical Society. But those stories tell of our commitment, our involvement, and our leadership. And they are part of that fabric that also represents our leadership historically in the arts, in literature, in exploring the world, and in political life and in national issues, including World War I. We as a community build on that history, understanding it, remembering it, and even facing the parts that we may not be as proud of to make our community truly an outstanding one and truly unique. The Doylestown Historical Society is playing a key role in ensuring that our history is not just remembered but also understood. The facade of the Armory is architecturally historic, but the bones in the Armory are not the Justice Center, though I'm sure there will be stories coming from the Justice Center that will become part of our history. The bones are really those stories. The structure becomes complete with the telling of those stories here and through the Doylestown Historic Society elsewhere. And the retelling that took place at Salem Church and that takes place now is what really builds our community going into the future. So this rededication is as much a thank you for and a recognition for our involvement in World War I is also a thank you to the Doylestown Historical Society for reminding us of our history, of our significant history then. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Strauss. So we seem to be doing pretty well, and the weather looks like it's holding. So why don't we go for a big finish here? Let me ask you to stand up and make your way to the Armory, where we will unveil the plaque, have the singing of one last song, and then wrap this thing up. So we'll see you there in about 5 minutes. Unveiling our plaque will be members of the American Legion, Jim McComb, and you can have Christopher Haney. Gentlemen? All right. So, of those of you who cannot see, it says Doylestown National Guard Armory. There's a great photograph of the people, the doughboys, who were trained in this building, marching up this street, making a right-hand turn, and going to the train station to leave for training. And it says, built in 1909, the Doylestown National Guard Armory stood on this site for more than 100 years. It was the original home to the only military unit based in Bucks County, Company G, 6th Infantry Regiment, National Guard of Pennsylvania. Having served as both a community center and military meeting place, the Armory's fortress-like walls recall the Bucks County recruits who departed Doylestown for foreign wars in the 20th century. The building's facade here preserved fronts the Bucks County Justice Center, which was dedicated in January 2015. So we will end our ceremony today with the singing of Keep the Home Fires Burning by soprano Susan Whiteneck.
And if you can just imagine what it was like to watch all those men march up the hill here, going down to the train station, that's kind of what this song is about. They were summoned from the hillside, they were called in from the glen, and the country found them ready at the stirring call for men. Let no tears add to their hardship as the soldiers pass along, and although your heart is breaking, make it sing this cheery song. Keep the home fires burning while your hearts are yearning. Though the lads are far away, they dream of home. There's a silver lining through the dark cloud shining. Turn the dark cloud inside out till the boys come home.
That was excellent. Thank you very much, Susan. And thank you very much for coming, ladies and gentlemen. And we hope to see you next week at the rededication of the World War I fountain. And we'll see you then. Thanks for coming.